everywhere you look. Corruption. We fight pointless wars over lies. Our future is in peril altogether. Wake up, America. You're in trouble. Martial law is already here. Expect an increase in military and police activity in the future. Wake up, America. You now under control by our tyrannical government. It is too late to complain. You should have complained at the beginning, when you had the chance. Now complaining will not make do. You have to rise up and expose everything. Wake up, people who are still in denial. The consequences of reality is here and now. Now it is time to get mad. I want you to get mad. This revolution will be the most chaotic and unprecedented in the history of mankind. The Civil War is here, America. Fight the elites. Learn to shoot a damn gun. Be ready what is to come. Do not miss 1 second of this video, as this is very important of any video. Spread the word. Burn it to a DVD, download it. Manipulate it, however. We don't care. We just need to spread the message out. All persons who are fighting against the New World Order, such as Anonymous, who has been working hard to take down the New World Order and expose everything. We are all in peril. If you think we are all safe, you must be mistaken. Not see, America is here, and it is time to take a stand. World War III is now, and the threat of nuclear war is imminent. Please wake up, and we call for Operation Wake the Masses. These events have been set up in succession, and now the New World Order is fast approaching, while Agenda 21 is now taking effect in America and throughout the world. If we lose this battle and fail to unite, then we allowed ourselves to get screwed down to the bone. Do not fall for one more trap. If you do, you will just be part of the problem Anonymous is dealing with. Global economic collapse is dangerously near. And for some of you, I cannot believe you are even sleeping well at night in the worldwide crises. I cannot even sleep well at night knowing my brothers and sisters around the world are in great danger, losing their substantial remaining freedoms we all have. This video will make you angry, weep, horrified. And this will serve as a biggest wake-up call of your life and will change your life forever. Pay special attention to what you will see in the video. Martial law is here, and is only the beginning of this beta testing before the military do go out and fight against us. How could some of you allow all this to happen and be so freaking scared if you protest? How disgusting and how immoral you are if you let this happen. To those who are awake and aware of the corruption, it is important to wake up the remaining peoples who are still ignoring the reality, and it is time to go all out. We will show no more mercy. We will be aggressive in our fight. We will not stand down. We will not give up. This is the biggest fight in the Anonymous era and in human history. The world will remember, and will look back at us and may say, boy, they have fed themselves up, and how could they allow evil to take over that quick? There is no more time to waste on television shows. This is our future in peril here. If we stand down and do nothing, we will become forever slaves to these tyrants and the New World Order. Get armed. Get prepared. Get ready for the big one coming, and the big one is just at the door. When will you wake up? Realize this is what we are all facing together worldwide. Spread the message. Do not miss one bit of this video. Pay attention. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We will never forgive tyranny. We will never forget what they have did to us. Too late, Illuminati, to even expect us. And time for you and your puppets to die and to be banished forever.
Hi everybody, this is Lisa Haven, and I've got some pretty bad news that I have to share with you guys today. But here's our headline for starters. It's huge new Army military document exposes, and I mean all out exposes, their martial law plans and their FEMA camp plans that they have set for the Southwest. This is huge. This was a recently classified document, and parts of it may still be classified. This has been the unclassified document, but it has recently been unclassified, and it reveals basically an 8-week training course, and it's called I have it written down here, jade helm or jade helm, H-E-L-M. I'm going to go through it with you guys in a moment. But this particular exercise is specifically taking place in places like Texas, Arizona, California, New Mexico, Nevada, and Colorado. These are the particular states that they're focusing on. And some of them they have even labeled as hostile. This is a huge red flag on so many levels. We all know the internment and resettlement document. If you haven't studied that, I highly encourage you guys to Google it. I've done quite a few videos on FEMA camps and the internment and resettlement document, not to mention the civilian labor camps, which are also a part of that. And I'll dive into some of that towards the end of the video. But for now, I want to dive into this newest document because we're in hell over high water. This is what it is. And I hate to say this, but this is some of the biggest news that I have covered yet, and probably the most dangerous. And it's not a whole lot of pages, so let's just dive right in. All right, so here we are on the document. It's titled U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and as you can see, it's been unclassified. Now, this is a request to conduct realistic material training, which they're calling RMT. That's what it's going to be referenced in the future. And it's Jade Helm 15, Jade Helm 15. And this is put out or put together by the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. What is the purpose? They're very clear on this. The commander of the United States Army Special Operations Command, or the USASOC, seeks a written invitation and approval from local officials to conduct realistic military training within jurisdictions for joint military exercise, which they're calling JH-15. So basically, they're asking permission, and I do believe they have it, to go ahead and go forward with this realistic training. Now, first of all, why would we need some kind of realistic training here in America and in our own soil and with civilians? People are going to dress as civilians on this thing, as you're going to see. The only reason for that would be martial law implementation, or, you know, rounding up a FEMA camps. There's a lot of reasons, but to make it realistic and to make it real, this is kind of the idea here. So what is, and here's where they get in a little more detail, but what is realistic military training? It says RMT is training conducted outside of federally owned property, meaning they want to use on our own soil outside of their own stuff. The RMT process is designed to ensure proper coordination between the Department of Defense representatives and local and regional authorities. It includes the following measures: risk assessment, medical and communication plans, MOU, MOA, and licensing agreement, including role players, legal review, ID of training staging areas, role players, airfield drop zones, for crying out loud, landing zones, letters of invitations behind from local officials, coordination with local, state, and federal law enforcement, meaning this is our military working with our PD, our local PD, our fire department, or whoever they need to work with to conduct things on our own soil. This is huge. It goes on. Let's move on to the next page. What is Jade Helm? Jade Helm is a challenging 8-week-long joint military and interagency unconventional warfare exercise conducted, here's the 6 places: Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. 7, excuse me, I failed to mention one earlier, but 7 places, which you're going to see in a moment that they're labeling some of these places as hostile on this particular drill, and there's reasons for that that I'll get into. But their second bullet point here is JH is a U.S. Special Operations Command sponsored exercise to improve the Special Operation Forces UW capability as part of the national security strategy. It will run from July 15th through September 2015. Now, if you live in one of these 7 states, expect a huge upkick in military activity from July, August, September for about a 3-month period. And that's huge. I live in one of these states. That's 3 months of crap that we could be hearing in the air and all kinds of military personnel and drills. Here's the thing. They're getting us used to military people being in the streets. That's martial law rule number one. That's the first thing they're doing. And as you're going to see in a moment, these are normal things that we'll expect to see. Number two, they're preparing to initiate martial law and maybe even roundups. This is not a joke. It's the real deal. Who's involved and where? Here. We have the Army Special Forces, the Navy SEALs, the Air Force, the Marine Special Ops, Marine Expeditionary Units, Airborne Division. This is a little bit of everything. Exercise locations. Here's their location. So if you live in one of these counties, or I think some of them are town. We have Caldwell as a county. Some of these are, San Antonio, a city. But here we go. Bastrop, Smithsville, Big Springs, Caddo Lake, Caldwell, Cristobal, College Station, Del City, and College Station, their Texas A&M is in that area. El Dorado, Golad, I might be butchering that, Junction, Leakey, Menade, Mountain Home, San Angelo, San Antonio, and Victoria. So if you live in one of these counties, of which I actually grew up in one of these counties, so have a lot of contacts there. I'll definitely be keeping information on that. But there they go. They're going to be running them all around there. And so beware if you're in those areas and get ready for some action. Now here, this is pretty, this ticks me off. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to put that, but I'm rather upset. Here is where they actually list in red and blue and brown and light brown different hostile areas. For this particular example or drill that they're doing, they have listed Texas and Utah as hostile. Let me think about that for a moment. Probably the most pro-gun people live in Texas. Texas is very patriotic. They wanted at one point to secede from the Union. Texas has a lot going for them. A lot of patriots, a lot of Christians in that area. Why would Texas be targeted? Specifically for that reason. There's a lot of patriots there. And this is one that they've listed as a hostile area as an example to the drill that they're going to be doing right here. And then they go even further and they list Utah. Anybody guess why that's in red? I have one. Mormons. Mormons are they teach against things like what the government's doing. They're big preppers. Okay, Mormons don't mess around. They don't agree with a lot of stuff that the government is doing, and the government knows that. This is why Mormon area has been targeted. Utah, Mormons, Christians, and we have Texas. We have Christians and patriots, both labeled as hostile examples that can be used. Now, the reason that they're actually labeled as hostile, and I'm gonna go there and then I'm gonna come back. It says here, why Texas? Okay, yeah, good question. Why Texas? Why is it hostile? And I'm gonna read this in a moment, but before I jump ahead on that, let me just explain some of the other states because it's gonna tell you in a moment. But here they have permissive California and Nevada and Colorado, and then they have uncertain about New Mexico. Maybe they're friendlies, maybe they're not. And then they have Arizona leaning friendly. I'm not quite sure why Arizona is leaning friendly, but they have it labeled as such. But these are their different labels and different stations that they have around for a reason. Now moving on. Why is there red here? Why is this hostile? Why is this hostile? Good question. That needs an answer. Well, here's what they give. The United States Special Operations Command has conducted numerous exercises in Texas because Texans are historically supportive of efforts to prepare our soldiers, airmen, Marines, and sailors to fight the enemies of the United States. Huh. That's funny. So basically, they're going to use Texas because Texas is supportive of our soldiers, airmen. Pretty much all of America is supportive of our soldiers and stuff. What we're not supportive is martial law and a corrupt government doing things like that. But I beg to differ. You're not going to call an area hostile because they are nice to military. And you know, you can make the exclamation or the debate, oh, it's because, you know, they label them as a hostile area because they're openly accepted as taking that temporary label. Whatever, that's not the case. We all know that Texas is very anti, you know, what's going on in the government, and they're very pro-gun, and the government is very against gun. This is why they're on the list. Same thing with Utah, but they've deliberately put them as hostiles, including the entire southwest of the United States in preparation. This is what drills are for. There's no other reason. Drill is to prepare for some event that could happen in the future. Obviously, they think there is a big enough threat to impose martial law that they are going to have such a drill. This is huge, and this is an 8-week long drill. It's not no puny 2-day drill. It's 8 weeks. 8 weeks. And then it goes on to say, to hone advanced skills, the military and intelligence require large areas of undeveloped land with low population densities in order to, with access to towns. Texas, I guess, gives them that. They didn't say anything about Utah. The proposed area offers the conditions conducive to qualified training because of real obstacles to challenge the joint and IA personnel during planning and execution of their task. Challenges include operating outside the normal support mechanisms, adapting to unfamiliar terrain, operating in and around communities where anything out of the ordinary will be spotted and reported. Locals are the first to notice something out of the place. Yes, so they're actually banking on being reported, and they're banking on doing this around neighborhoods and communities. There's no other reason for that except to get us ready for martial law, to get us ready for Roundup. And then it goes on to list this pretty shocking fact: the opportunity to work with civilians to gain their trust and understanding of the issues, but it doesn't say what the issues are. So in other words, they want to work around civilians, conducting drills around civilians to gain their trust. Why would they need to gain our trust? Why? Martial law. So if they have to come in and start rounding up patriots and start rounding up Christians and start rounding up veterans, you can bet we're in hell over high water, because that is exactly what they want to do. And that's how they would get people in communities to work with them. Do you see a neighbor doing something? Say something. This is exactly the motto and the lingo that we're hearing from the White House right now. Moving on, it says that 1,200 service members will participate in the drill, including support, opposing force personnel, training unit. Anticipate minimal physical impact on any given area due to the large area of operations. Interesting. Funding identified for this portion of the exercise will go straight into the economy. Oh, look, it's good for the economy. And its estimated economic impact, except for the $150,000 price tag, but I guess that's what they think they can bring the economy, is how I read it. So there you go. Moving on, what to expect. Okay, now this is interesting. If you live in Bastrop, Caldwell, Austin area, all of these places that I mentioned earlier, or in the Southwest area, what you can expect at night or during the day: increased aircraft in the area at night, noise complaints. Some individuals may conduct suspicious activities designated to prepare them for complex environments overseas. Local LEOs are fully aware of the exercise. Local footprints will be 60 to 65 personnel. Personnel may be carrying weapons with blank ammo. Some participants will be wearing civilian attire and driving civilian vehicles. Now, why would they need that? Martial law. I think it's very, very evident here. But we're not even on the brink. We're here, folks. This is huge. This is just, here's a couple safety measures they're going to take. You can read that on your own later. if you want, and then it goes into questions and concerns and who you gonna call. I guess their contact informations, but that's the whole unclassified part that we have at this moment. And the reason that they've unclassified only this section, well, is because some in the Southwest are going to want to know why military personnel are walking around their neighborhood. So I guess all that to say that it's hitting the fan. I mean, it really is. And I wanted to bring you this document and show you it page by page because it's not that long. It's, I think, 8 or 9-ish pages if you include the last one, or 12 pages total, actually. But anyway, this is a huge red flag. Now, what I want to do is just, I said I would kind of briefly touch on a few documents. Let me pull them out because I got them here. And the first one, you guys have seen this before. It's the Internment and Resettlement Operations document. I've gone through this on numerous occasions, but just to hit a couple briefs on that page, there's actually diagrams on it that show what the FEMA camps and
Hey, what's up guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. Obama has declared cyber terrorism as a national emergency. And this came out yesterday. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just an April Fool's joke, but apparently this is real. There was an executive order that was published by the White House that declares this, and I have the document here, and it says here, quote, I, Barack Obama, President of the United States of America, find that the increasing prevalence and severity of malicious cyber-enabled activities originating from or directed by persons located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States constitutes an annual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with this threat. This is no surprise after it was reported by RT back in February 10th that the White House creates new cyber agency in effort to combat computer hacks, and more recently with things we've been covering here with Googletopia, Internet Fascism is here, and I'll put a link to that video in the description section, and also net neutrality, which basically creates a cyber panopticon situation. Now, the whole point of this sanction was to be able to go after any international hackers that may be trying to get into the United States network systems, whether they be government or business-related operations. And what they are allowed to do now is they can pinpoint the individuals or groups that are trying to hack, and they can basically freeze their money and they can go after them. So to get a better grasp of this, there's an RT article that came out which kind of summarizes the whole thing. And the article quotes Lisa Monaco, who is a Homeland Security advisor to the president. And she is stated as, quote, by freezing assets of those subject to sanctions and making it more difficult for them to do business with U.S. entities, we can remove a powerful economic motivation for committing these acts in the first place. And she went on to say, with this new tool, malicious cyber actors who would target our critical infrastructure or seek to take down internet services will be subject to those costs when designated for sanctions. Now again, this just sounds like they're lock and step in the agenda of trying to lock down the internet and control it as much as they can and have legal jurisdiction to do so. And the article actually points out one of the concerns here, which is sanctions or secret spilling. And it says here, quote, given that the executive order authorizes action to be taken against entities accused of assisting deliberate activities accomplished through unauthorized access to a computer, though concerns have already gave way regarding the possible use of the directive to censor foreign news and outlets depending on how their source material has been obtained. Marcy Wheeler, an independent national security reporter formerly with The Intercept, wrote on her blog on Wednesday that there is the possibility that the administration might use the executive order to target foreign entities that disclose secret documents if they happened to be acquired in a method that doesn't cut the administration's mustard. So it just gives them more power to allegedly go after some of these malicious hackers. A couple problems with this, though, and again, the article points it out. This article is really good. I will link it to you guys. First off, this doesn't account for the number of hacking that's going outward. The United States government or, either independent or government hired hackers from the United States going into other nations and, pulling up documents and things like that that are probably illegal to do. It doesn't address that issue. But also, it says here, aimed at United States activists, question mark. Andrew Weave Aurenheimer, a 29-year-old computer hacker who was sentenced to prison for disclosing a security vulnerability that affected AT&T and Apple, added that the administration's latest order may be ineffective given the realm in which cyber actors operate today. And he states, quote, the measure would have been something to pass in the 90s when technologies for irreversible currency transactions didn't exist. As it stands, this is just going to hasten the advance of Bitcoin's adoption of criminal enterprise. Courts cannot seize Bitcoin without seizing the keys, which are held in countries hostile to United States enforcement arms. Obama's administration continually attempts to give the impression they're fighting foreign cybercrime, but every single indictment seems to be aimed at United States activists. I was falsely imprisoned by the Obama administration and tortured for legitimate and lawful public criticism of his corporate allies. Before passing more regulations, his administration should do their duty of making amends to me for the terroristic violence it performed upon me. So there you go. The concern is not just this national threat to America, but just within our borders, people that may be trying to get into government documents and things like that. If they hack or if they are exposed in some way, they are able to go after them, and they're trying to control the distribution of information. I mean, this is pretty clear that that's what's happening. You wouldn't declare a national emergency if there wasn't some sort of reason to allow the White House to go after individuals or groups that may be threatening to them, you know, because ultimately when they do stuff like this, they don't have necessarily the best interest of the Americans in mind. They have the best interest of the corporate government in mind. And of course, cyber terrorism is probably just another excuse for the corporate war machine that is the United States to continue all of this wars and rumors of wars. So I will leave links to a couple of these articles in the description section so you can do your own research on this, but I wanted to bring to your attention that the agenda continues to lock down the internet, and this is just another step. They're fighting crime at the expense of your freedoms. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless.
Welcome to the Basic Video Show. I am your host, Ted, from beautiful Chico, California. Well, we have a crazy day going on right now. We have Obama declaring a national emergency because of Russian plutonium being sold and enriched. And also we have the Brits supposedly having special forces on the ground invading Syria right now. There's supposedly massive gunfire. And this is just a crazy day. So we have a brink of World War III, and then we have Obama trying to clamp down domestically to blame the Russians. Because the Russians are going to protect Syria because that's one of their allies, along with Iran. It's just a crazy day. But no matter what, we have to look at this and say, Obama has declared a national state of emergency, basically putting all control under his offices. Because we have the Obamacare vote coming up, and we have the Fast and Furious vote against Eric Holder coming up. And what better time when you're losing it all to throw all your cards on the table and say, hey, I'll just declare a national emergency and just call it a day. I'll forfeit everything. I'll forfeit Congress, and you can't say nothing because I'm the dictator-in-chief. At the same time where all of his programs are falling apart and he's being exposed for different catastrophic whistleblowing events every single day. We have cops calling in on the Alex Jones show nearly crying, saying that there's supposed to be exercises in St. Louis to confiscate guns and that they might need air coverage from the military. We have all this going on, and we have the financial collapse of Europe. Really, what is not going wrong right now? Do you really feel safe in your house? I feel safe in my house. I don't live in fear. But really, looking at this massive influx of just crazy news every day. The average person, if they didn't know what was going on, if they started just all of a sudden pay attention, they would be running for the hills. They'd be sitting at grocery stores buying 100 gallons of water at once and just hair on fire. We have George Soros coming out trying to say that the euro's falling apart when we already know that. We have bank downgrades. But the real issue at home is we have the Obamacare vote coming up, and we have the contempt charges against Eric Holder, which Obama declared that they can't look at it. So why you waste your time if I can just come in and say, no, you're not going to look at that. I don't want you to look at that right now. I want you to focus on this. If you don't look at it, everybody will get a music card. Don't look at the evidence for Fast and Furious. You'll get a free car and music cards and plush bunnies. I'll give everybody tens of thousands of dollars right now if you just don't look at the evidence. But the evidence is there in black and white. He says he didn't know about it, but he was saying straight up and on the news talking about it. These guys are all guilty as hell, and they need to cover up their crimes somehow. What better way than declare a national emergency on something that totally does not relate to national security when Russia is in the news basically screaming at Obama saying, "What the hell are you doing, you psychopath?" Remember last week when everybody was saying, yeah, Putin gave Obama a tongue lashing for like 20 minutes. Yeah. And then next week, what does he do? He declares a national emergency against Putin. While Putin is in Israel, there's British forces on the ground trying to go after Syria. It's just a crazy day, and we need to dissect this and really take a hard look at this and say, why is he blaming Russia all of a sudden? Why is he saying that he is declaring a national emergency over something that Russia is doing, when a national emergency basically relates to what's going on the United States actual soil itself? Because this plutonium-grade, missile-grade plutonium is being sold to Japan and a couple other countries, but does not relate to what is going on here. What is going on here is that there's been reports of military on the streets with tanks and basically doing exercises all over the country. And at the same time, we have a total financial meltdown going on here. We have record unemployment. We have cities that are starting to declare bankruptcy, such as Stockton is starting to talk about that right now. We have just a total financial meltdown, and it's just one thing after another. We have a very strong chance, if the Justice Department would step up, to be able to impeach our president at any given time. But the problem is we have the Justice Department protecting the president, because the Justice Department is wrapped up with the killing and murdering of cops and hundreds of innocent civilians. So the people that are supposed to police the system.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
All right, folks, there's a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives have just overwhelmingly passed the National Defense Authorization Act. Squeezed into this military funding bill are two provisions that give the military not just lots and lots of money, but lots and lots of power as well.
A new generation of surveillance drones could soon be watching us all. The Federal Aviation Administration is expected to announce plans to expand the use of domestic drones in American airspace.
Well, get ready to look up at the sky and see drones hovering above. As of now, unmanned aircraft could only be used by military airspace and by certain law enforcement agencies. But this week, Congress passed a bill that would allow for commercial and private use of the drones.
I have two words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
We're shopping and dining over Thanksgiving and maybe watching some football games. Big government Republicans and Democrats were busy shredding the last vestiges of the Constitution. Senators John McCain and Carl Levin want to enact a law that would declare the entire United States of America a battlefield for the military. They're talking about inserting the Army into domestic law enforcement. Senator Lindsey Graham, who supports this bill, says, quote, "The homeland is part of the battlefield, and people can be held without trial, whether an American citizen or not."
The Department of Homeland Security buying ammunition, now looking to purchase another 21 million rounds of ammunition. This in addition, of course, to the 1.6 billion rounds that Homeland Security has bought in just the past 10 months. Now, to put all of this in perspective, the military used approximately 70 million rounds each year of the Iraq War. 70 million rounds in a war.
If you look at what the Department of Homeland Security has been purchasing over the last year, it comes out to like 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition, more than 7,000 fully automatic assault weapons, 2,700 MRAP type vehicles, and now drones. Those are instruments of war. Department of Homeland Security's, who are they going to fight a war against?
Something happened.
Robert Whitaker, the Tactical Supervisor for El Paso SRT for Homeland Security Investigation. Well, we have our big vehicle out here. It's an armored vehicle. It's an MRAP vehicle. It's mine resistant, ambush protected is what it stands for. This is what we use to deliver our team to high-risk warrant services.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
Important breaking news out of Boston: a pair of bombings rocked the finish line at the historic Boston Marathon.
It was never meant that we would have this gigantic police force from the federal government. I mean, we had martial law up there, FBI and all these agents coming in and closing things down, going to people's houses. Do we close down cities because there's 10 murders over the weekend in Chicago? We don't do that. But here we close down a whole city, not even allowed to go to a baseball game. I mean, I think it's very, very scary when I look at some of those pictures.
The military likes to perform war games, so that's why we're seeing military on the streets practicing. They are actually practicing. The tanks that we see on the streets and the National Guard patrolling neighborhoods and the practices that they're doing with our local police department, this is all in preparation for martial law, so that when they do actually lock down the country, they've got everything secured.
But I think what we're starting to see, for anybody who is objective at all, is we're seeing a totalitarian system now unveil itself. And ever since essentially 9/11 happened, it's been more and more of these draconian measures that are leading us right down the road to martial law.
Particularly to hear President Obama claim the power to keep people in prison indefinitely with no charges against them, no conviction, no sentence, just imprisonment. It's particularly stunning to hear him make that claim in the middle of a speech that was all about the rule of law.
This last week, the U.S. Congress passed a bill that
which repeals posse comitatus, which means that we have now institutionalized and codified martial law. Right now, the battle against terrorism involves all of us. Everybody in this country is a potential terrorist.
We don't even understand freedom anymore. We are a country that is headed towards socialism, totalitarianism, beyond your wildest imagination. I have to tell you, I'm doing a story tonight that I wanted to debunk these FEMA camps. I'm tired of hearing. You know about them? Sure. I'm tired of hearing them. I wanted to debunk them. Well, we've now for several days done research on them. I can't debunk them.
I don't know anything about them.
It is our government. If you trust our government, it's fine. If you have any kind of fear that we might be headed towards a totalitarian state, look out, buckle up. There's something going on in our country that is ain't good.
And they find a little red dot or a little blue dot on their mailbox, and they wonder what the little red dot and blue dot is. Well, it's marking your mailbox by the government, so when foreign troops come in here on us after martial law, but if you have a blue dot, they take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America by Halliburton. So I'm going to tell all of you, if you have not bought ammunition, if you have not bought guns, go get them now. Go get them now, because you won't be able to get them much longer.
Change has come to America.
Practice Christianity and you could be court-martialed. That could be the new law of the land for our armed forces, thanks to a proposal by a religious tolerance group that claims Christian evangelists are predators.
Is a war on religious liberty within the military, and that the Christianity of service members is now coming under attack by the Obama administration.
It's so incredible. Here's a new article by Kurt Nimmo that's got links to Fox News, Denver papers, you name it. The state police have gone public and said we're in federal training now where they're asking us will we confiscate guns from Christians. Now, do you understand how even more illegal that is? Behind the scenes, they're training for what can only be called a foreign authoritarian takeover of this country via the federal government and the foreign banks. Here's the article. Colorado troopers trained to consider Christians as dangerous terrorists. Absolutely amazing. And it's all bibliographed. It's all linked to it being announced, to it being reported.
The company has now implanted 2 workers with microchips to monitor their movements, causing some to charge invasion of privacy. The company says it's merely a layer of security beyond key cards and clearance codes. I don't get one of those soon. Well, joining me now is Lance Ulanoff, editor-in-chief of PC Magazine. Lance, this sounds like some freaky science fiction book. Tell us what this is about. These 2 workers have microchips?
Right. Well, this is very, very real, and these microchips are about the size of a grain of rice. They get injected into your skin.
Film. Humans injected with a tiny chip holding the key to all of their private information.
But as you're about to see in our CBS 46 investigation, it's not fiction. In fact, it's being marketed in Georgia as life-saving technology. Life-saving technology.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers in a brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
It is the first implantable microchip for humans that has multiple security, financial, and healthcare applications.
One thing I would just suggest, I'm just an outside soon-to-be investor. I love this idea, by the way, Scott. I think
the Northside Independent School District in San Antonio has put tracking chips in the ID badges for more than 4,000 high school students.
Well, it looks and sounds like something out of the future, but a new palm scanning device will help Bossier Parish schools keep better track of what children are eating at. The electronic device will be implemented at all Bossier Parish schools.
Now we're seeing a complete
totalitarian takeover of the United States of America. And we've been talking about this for years now. This is the police state. This is the police state. This is what a total breakdown of our society looks like. But we're seeing all of this intensify. This is all intensifying around the Second Amendment. Should we be able to own guns or not? Let's take guns away from the people. These are very big, very hardcore issues.
No matter what your purpose is, you must leave. If you do not disperse, you may be arrested and or subject to other police action. The use of riot control agents and or less lethal munitions, which could cause risk of injury to those who
Wall of police now moving in.
American, every person on United States soil or international soil can be deemed as a terrorist. If they have really any reason to want to detain you, they don't need to acknowledge your Fourth Amendment rights.
It's what supported things like the Patriot Act and now the NDAA and the ever-encroaching police state.
By order of the City of Pittsburgh Chief Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all those assembled to immediately disperse. You must leave the immediate vicinity.
Urban military training exercises are becoming an increasingly common sight in many U.S. cities. The Department of Homeland Security has spent the past year acquiring more than 1 billion rounds of high-performance ammunition. Do these developments suggest concerns over a potential terrorist attack? Are they preparations for widespread social upheaval? Is there perhaps something even more sinister underway? There's an insider at the Department of Homeland Security who described urban warfare training as, quote, desensitizing exercises all across the US, adding that, quote, we're being prepared for mass civil unrest in major US cities. DoD will be expected to help when we're requested.
If we don't act now, we're going to lose all our rights. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. You don't have to believe what I'm telling you. You can look it up for yourself. You can ask questions. I mean, that's what being a free democratic society is all about, is asking questions. And, you know, they don't have the answers for them because it's all there in black and white. You read the bill and it tells you exactly what's going on. So, and if enough people start questioning, then they're going to have to rescind the bill. I mean, I don't want my family growing up in an oppressive society where they can't walk outside and breathe fresh air without someone pointing a gun at them. And they might say that that could never happen, but why would they put that language in there, giving them the authority to do it if they didn't have any intent on using it? So don't believe what they tell you, because our forefathers left England because of the very things that are going on in our government today. I served my country. I got an honorable discharge from the Army, and I swore an oath to protect the country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, these people that are operating in our government right now are criminals, and you don't have to agree with me. You can disagree with me, but time will tell. And if we don't do something, like I said, if we don't all stand up and participate in our free democratic society, you're going to lose your rights, and you're going to lose them quick. They're devaluing the dollar. The Federal Reserve is printing money, which they don't have the authority to do, regardless of what Congress says they do. It's in the Constitution. They do not have the authority to print paper money. That's in our Constitution. So whatever you hear on TV isn't what the reality is. And the people need to stand up and unite and stop this, because you are losing your rights as we speak. They got H.R. 2749, which is a Food Safety Act, and this affects the entire country, which gives them the authority to shut down a geographical area, meaning a state, a whole state, if they want to, under the guise of contaminated food. They can stop all forms of transportation in and out of the state. They can destroy vehicles. They can declare martial law, and they can shut restaurants down. They can shut down supermarkets. And I'm not going for it, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are upset and they don't know what to do. But I'm telling you right now, all we have to do is unite, and we'll be a force to be reckoned with. Because generally speaking, the people are on the side of the winners. Meaning, if there's more of us than there are of them, then people are going to be on our side. They're not going to be on their side. Because that's how people are. It's the nature of them, and the government knows that. They've done studies, they figured those things out, and that's why they put all these hot button issues out there to distract people, so they argue amongst themselves, like race and abortion and terrorism and healthcare and God only knows what else. They got you all distracted, arguing amongst each other while they're all fucking robbing us. Excuse my language, but I'm pissed. So, getting back to the issues, I'm not going to get into everything, but we have a lot of problems in this country, and it's been since the beginning of time. The majority of problems arise from greed. So that's the starting point. Abraham Lincoln said, the money powers prey on the nation in times of peace and conspire against it in times of adversity. And we're in times of adversity right now. And that's what the Federal Reserve is doing. And they're not the only bad guy out there, but they have exceeded their authority by printing money. It's in our Constitution. They don't have the right to print paper money. Our founding fathers knew the hazards of that, and they specifically put it in the Constitution to make it criminal to do so, because it happened before in this country. And they stopped teaching stuff in school, and people don't know. I talked to people today, they didn't even know what martial law was. They're like, what's that? And when I told them, they couldn't believe it. So, I mean, you figure it out. I mean, people have to wake up. And it's unfortunate, but we're at a point right now that if people don't wake up, they're going to lose everything that they fought for and struggled for all these years. And not to mention all the things that our forefathers fought for and died for this country. So I don't want that coming down on my back, and I'm sure that you don't want it coming down on yours. So when everyone realizes that they've been duped, they're going to be pissed. And that's why they put all these laws in place, so that when people do realize, it'll be too late for them, and they won't have anything to say about it because they'll be locked up or shot. Because if you open your mouth against the regime, that's what happens to you. Just ask Saddam Hussein's people. And I'm not saying that we're living in one at this particular moment, but we're heading fast towards it. So and I'm not the history teacher, that needs to fall on your shoulders. You need to do your own reading. You need to get involved and start contacting your representatives and putting pressure on them, because one person can't do it. It takes a village to raise a child. You heard that expression. It's true. It takes a village to like elect a leader, and then it takes a village to watch that leader and make sure he doesn't go power hungry. And that's where we fell off. We were out watching football or basketball or baseball or going on the beach or talking on the internet or texting each other, whatever the case may be, arguing about healthcare or abortion while they're robbing.
Ever reasonable to restrict constitutional freedoms in the name of fighting terrorism?
In our opinion, no.
And now the plain truth. As you've seen on our show, the government at times tells you lies. The deception is historic and continuous. The government needs to be exposed because it cannot be trusted to expose itself. We live in exciting and fearful times. Most of you today are not afraid of big crime or big business or big labor. Rather, most of us are most afraid of big government.
All right, folks, there is a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America.
Who could want a government that punishes people for speech, that lets its own agents write their own search warrants, that fights wars just to keep the military-industrial complex busy, that debases all you own by printing worthless money and putting it into the stream of commerce, that gives away more than half the tax dollars it collects, and that, despite express provisions in the Constitution to the contrary, permits the president to lock up whoever he wants and to throw away the key.
The president saying he can secretly kill Americans and have bags put over our head and have us thrown into black vans to disappear forever. Or look at the TSA on the airports groping people. Look at the drones in our skies. Look at arming checkpoints now, the end of posse comitatus. We see the president signing legislation to charge people with felonies if they protest at national security events. You know, people ask, is this martial law? Yes, we've been under a soft form of martial law with secret arrest, warrantless spying, protesters getting beaten up, all of these type of things going on for a long, long time. Now they're telling us torture is good, secret arrest of citizens is good, the government taking over infrastructure is good. They don't deny all this stuff that we warn people about forever being real now.
Ron Wyden and Mark Udall of Colorado, two Democratic senators, came out today and said, hey, you know what? We know things you don't because we're on an intelligence committee, and Americans would be, quote, stunned to find out how the American government is applying the Patriot Act.
Documents just released indicate police departments across the country do track cell phones without bothering to get any permission from a court.
After reviewing 5,500 pages of records, the ACLU says police agencies large and small often obtain cell phone data without court permission.
If the government wants it, it needs a search warrant. If it gets it without a search warrant, it has committed a crime. A crime.
Obtaining a warrant can slow down that process.
Oh, it's going to slow the process down if we have to ask for have to ask a judge, can we search authorized cell phone records to find a missing person? Call me.
A cell phone warrant, it usually took me about 15 minutes. Once you've written one, you've written all of them.
You know, warrants are in our Constitution. You need to get a warrant before you search or seize anything. But apparently the Constitution no longer applies.
The ACLU saying in the report this has become big business for service providers.
The practice is so common that cell phone companies have manuals for police.
If my cell phone company is going to give up my information, I think they need to send me a note in the mail, say we gave your information to a third party, because they always tell you we're not going to give your information to a third party.
But they also found training manuals, like one from the Iowa City Police Department that says, in quotes, do not mention to the public or the media the use of cell phone technology or equipment used to locate the target subject. The manual also advises not to put this stuff into the police reports. So, doesn't that make you feel safe? Law enforcement is doing something that they know would probably cause public outrage and which they know raises legal questions. So their solution is not to stop doing it. No, of course not. Their solution is just to hide it from you.
Unless they suspect me of a crime, the police do not need to follow me. That's why they need probable cause. And people say, what do you have to hide? I don't have anything to hide, but the police don't need to follow me if they have no reason to think that I'm in Al-Qaeda. And by the way, I'm not in Al-Qaeda.
You know, it's just another sign of our ever-expanding surveillance state. One that's being sold to the people as a buffer against terrorism. But the truth is, it's being used by law enforcement all the time to track people that have nothing to do with a terrorism-related investigation.
It started with the FBI, and the government said, oh, we have to let the FBI do it because they're tracking terrorists. Now, it's no longer terrorists, it's every case, any conceivable case, and it's no longer terrorists, and it's no longer just the FBI, it's all the local police as well. So, there you have it. That's how we destroy our Constitution right in front of our eyes.
The ACLU's most recent info sheet says that 1.7 billion, with a B, emails, phone calls, and text messages are being intercepted and stored by the U.S. government.
Now, the CIA, or the Central Intelligence Agency, prides itself on being the best spying machine in the world. But how much are new technologies that, you know, we're all growing to love, growing to depend on, making the job easier for them? Be it social networking, a variety of gadgets that we all use that are now connected to the internet, like your PlayStation, your smartphone, your GPS. Soon enough, even more devices inside your home.
And then they had the Secretary of Defense, they had the CIA director in there, Petraeus, saying, oh, we're working with industry to have bugs and tracker systems built into all appliances. Your dishwasher is going to be listening to you. Watch what you say. We don't need warrants anymore.
It's a really scary world of scary possibilities out there, and Congress is ready to counter it, with over 50 cybersecurity bills introduced just in this congressional session. But is this threat being overblown? Are we conflating different threats all into one gigantic apocalyptic scenario just to line the pockets of defense contractors and create a massive cybersecurity complex? So far, nobody in Congress has actually provided evidence that cybersecurity legislation of this nature really is needed.
There are a lot of folks who stand to benefit from comprehensive cybersecurity legislation, especially if that legislation comes attached with big spending.
Well, if you thought that SOPA and PIPA were bad, just wait until you hear about cybersecurity legislation working its way through Congress. It's called CISPA, or the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protect Act, also known as HR 3523. Here, Microsoft, Facebook, Tech America, they're on board. How come?
Well, it tells the internet companies, look, our bad. We didn't mean to go after you guys, okay? You're giant corporations as well. We're totally happy with you guys. What we want to do is go after anyone that dares to cross the government, and we know you guys would never make that mistake. Now, you might think, come on, are they really going to do that? Hell, yes, they're going to do that. Let me give you a perfect example, WikiLeaks. If they have a law like this, they could just simply come in and tell the ISP provider, look at this law that we have, it's over, shut down WikiLeaks. But also, did you notice they snuck in private entity? So if you're a threat to a private entity, they might also shut you down.
And under the veil of doing things for cybersecurity purposes, they would allow companies to collect and monitor private communications and then share them with the government or anybody else. A company like Google, Facebook, Twitter, or AT&T could intercept your emails and text messages, send copies to one another and to the government, and modify those communications or prevent them from reaching their destination if it fits into their plan to stop cybersecurity threats.
So what it does is it essentially carves out a cybersecurity exception to all of our privacy laws.
So in the end, if they pass this, instead of passing PIPA or SOPA, well, they might have the same effect in terms of shutting down our sites, and they also have the second effect of merging business and state even further together. I'm afraid that I'm a little pessimistic on this one. I said that we could win on SOPA. I accurately called that one. Why? because we had huge corporations on our side. Facebook, Google, etc. Now we're on our own. And without those guys backing us up, good luck to us.
Starting Thursday, July 12th, ISPs, Internet Service Providers, will be spying not just on your bandwidth, right, but specifically on what you are downloading. You are giving them an unfettered, unchecked right to cut off your service based upon the claims of copyright holders who have been shown time and time and time again to make false claims. And there's no recourse for you.
Well, I think that online piracy is a red herring. These transnational content companies make more money than ever. Look at how much money is made from legitimate music downloads via iTunes. They're making a fortune, literally, billions of dollars every year in legal download revenue. And they're saying that they need to crack down on pirates, but really they want to crack down on internet communication itself.
Talking Points memo reports that Facebook has started to ask certain users to upload photos of their government-issued ID cards. That includes passports, driver's licenses, work or military IDs will also do.
And these documents indicate that the Department of Homeland Security has been spying on us on Facebook, and they're looking for specific words. And some of the words that they're looking for on our profiles includes marijuana, right? So I'll give you an example of some of the, I guess, words that set the alarms for the Department of Homeland Security. Drill, all right, drill, exercise, airport.
Exercise, okay. Well, why don't you just go ahead and waste all of our time and our money going after that?
Airport, drug, narcotics, cocaine, and marijuana.
But once you create these things, they grow out of control.
They do.
And Big Brother just keeps on rolling on.
I mean, we live in a police state at this point, with the police enforcement spying on innocent people without absolutely no probable cause. This is just another example of that.
Not only is your every move on Facebook now being posted for your friends to see, but Facebook might still be watching even after you log out.
Sure. So over the last few decades, we've increasingly come to entrust third parties with our private data. All of these companies have been trusted by us, and they're collecting data about us in many cases and storing it, in the cloud or in some data center. And once the data leaves our possession, it's really up for grabs for the government.
A new AP investigation has revealed that the NYPD was spying on activists as far away as New Orleans. Now, if the NYPD is traveling down to New Orleans to monitor a protest and tracking Muslims all over the Northeast, then one can only imagine how they're reacting to the Occupy movement.
It's being called intelligent CCTV, surveillance cameras that can pick out suspicious behaviour in a crowd and stop terrorists before they strike. Researchers in Reading are leading the world in developing the new technology.
Researchers at Reading University think they've got the technology to spot the terrorists before they strike.
First, there were eyes on the street, and now there are eyes in the skies. The Director of National Intelligence has given the go-ahead for the nation's spy satellites to be used regularly by U.S. civilian agencies and law enforcement.
Now the Department of Homeland Security wants to monitor anybody who's leaving the United Kingdom, not just Americans. Now, those who are traveling to Mexico are also going to be sharing personal details, especially if they're flying to Mexico City or to Cancun. And if any travelers are pondering a vacation in Cuba or the Caribbean, be prepared to give over your info too. This is an excuse to collect everybody's information about the TSA. Turns out they're not just doing these things in airports anymore. They're now doing them at ferries. They're doing them at bus stations, on subways. So are you ready to just start having TSA everywhere that you go?
Yeah. The part I found most interesting is that they've been working with ICE. So, you're going to get your papers inspected while you're being fondled.
We have a $2 billion data center being built out in the Utah desert to spy on American citizens.
It's NSA's newest and biggest surveillance program. It's called Total Information Awareness. The program targets all kinds of electronic information from around the world. So this includes emails, tweets, texts, phone conversations, you name it, from U.S. citizens. It's being called the biggest spy machine ever.
It's just going to get bigger. They're just going to use these resources in new ways.
To be specific,
After all, I have not gotten any more mail, any more emails on any other subject than this one that is before us today. Mr. Speaker, I understand we're under martial law as declared by the Speaker last night.
Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no.
They say trust us. Trust us, the people who brought us Katrina, to be competent in face of a disaster. Trust us, the people who brought us warrantless wiretapping and other excesses eroding our civil liberties. Trust us. Maybe the plan just really doesn't exist, and that's why they won't show it to us.
If you live in the heartland of America, you have to listen up. While the nation was distracted with the Anthony Weiner drama, President Obama signed an executive order that will seize greater power over food, fiber, and energy in our vast countryside areas. Why would Homeland Security be involved in exerting power and influence over the heartland? The aims of the White House Rural Development Plan sound eerily similar to a UN plan called Agenda 21, where a central planning agency would be responsible for oversight into all areas of our lives, a one world order. Sound familiar?
You say that would mean that we the people, the United States Constitution, would be circumvented at the altar of this one world what?
One world government, one world secondary. We would be, our sovereignty would be subject to the dictates of the World Trade Organization, the World Bank.
This is AIG, Goldman, and you know what? The Bavarian Illuminati, the Trilateral Commission, Goldman Sachs, and the Queen of England are not all bad. Goldman can be the first to rally hard enough to fix itself. I call it a virtuous circle that makes the stock even more attractive. Oh, by the way, I am part, just like when I was playing with an open hand, I am part of the powerful cabal of ex-Goldman associates that controls the world.
We economic hitmen have created the world's first truly global empire. And it's the first empire in history that's been created primarily without the military. Out of the ruins, something new will take seed. I want to believe that we can not collapse, but change. And the whole world can change, and the whole world economy. And I think we have a really good shot at doing that.
I really think he's going over there to try to create a one world order. God forbid this even, that this happens in our country. Our country, as we know it now, will no longer exist. The thing that worries me the most is this health care bill, and why I'm scared about it. It's not about the health care. It's about the provisions that are in that bill. One is that if this thing passes, the government will have the right to come into our home and regulate how we raise our children.
What's happening is we are now in a state of martial law and war globally. NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, that Obama has called for and signed, stipulates that even American citizens can now be targeted by the military, picked up, and imprisoned indefinitely without civilian trial, thus throwing out our due process, our habeas corpus clauses. So we are now in the state of martial law. Everything is now creating conditions for a total war state. I mean, McCain called for the whole of America becoming part of the so-called battlefield. America is now a battlefield. The whole earth is a battlefield.
When law enforcement roam the streets, leveling guns at the windows of homes.
Yeah, you sent us this picture.
That's a problem.
Shows a guy in the gun turret pointing right at somebody's window.
We had lots of examples of that in New Orleans when they brought in the National Guard.
This is after Hurricane Katrina. And Mayor Nagin said, well, I've declared martial law. And then
he can't.
He can't. That has to be the Congress or the president. Let's explain what martial law means.
Well, martial law just is very simple. It means you're under the responsibility of the militaries.
They declare martial law or whatever state of emergency.
The police already have special powers. There are only two ways to do things in life, voluntarily or forced. Only government police officers, for example, have the right to use force on others. They can detain us, jail us, shoot us if they think it's necessary. That's why it's important that we have this, the Constitution. But the police don't always respect this. Like most people, they're happy to acquire more power and money.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? How has the United States changed from a humble, peaceful republic into a police state? Have you ever noticed that the government always claims that when it does these things, it does so in the name of safety? When is the last time you heard the government give, as a basis for its behavior, personal freedom?
The slow transformation into a military police state.
We now have police dressed like Army Special Forces, driving in armored tanks and holding assault rifles, the sight of which alone is enough to terrify innocent people into submission. The militarization of local police departments is not only changing the way peaceful communities once looked, it's also bringing the battle mentality to our neighborhoods. We may not see police as a threat to us now, but when peace officers are geared up like soldiers, they'll eventually act like they're going to war.
Who could want a government that punishes people for speech, that lets its own agents write their own search warrants, that fights wars just to keep the military-industrial complex busy, that debases all you own by printing worthless money and putting it into the stream of commerce, that gives away more than half the tax dollars it collects, and that, despite express provisions in the Constitution to the contrary, permits the president to lock up whoever he wants and to throw away the key? Whether you believe that we are the highest order of natural selection, or whether you believe, as I do, that we were created by God in His image and likeness, you know in your heart that these natural yearnings, as St. Thomas Aquinas and Thomas Jefferson called them, are our natural rights, are a part of our humanity, and cannot long be denied us. And yet, they have been denied. America, the greatest losses to our freedom have come not from someone attacking us, but from the government ignoring the Constitution and the majority letting them get away with it. And we should make the government afraid of us. Afraid of us. Because as Jefferson reminded us, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there is liberty.
Hi, everybody. This is Lisa Haven, and I've got lots of information that I want to cover today. I literally have piles of stuff on my desk here, so excuse me if I have to rumble through some of that. But I've got various things that I want to cover, but to hit it kind of in a nutshell as far as the topic, I would say that it's the globalist agenda that has been in play for years. This isn't something new. It has been in play for even decades. And not only that, but evidence and proof and hardcore documents that prove that America is basically going to hell in a handbasket. I'm going to cover everything from, our Second Amendment issues to a CIA document, and you guys are going to love this, back from 1974, that basically proves the depopulation agenda even started then. But to dive into that later, here we are, Agenda 21, and even more so, so much on the forefront. But before I get ahead of myself, let me start with some of the main goals of the elitists, those in power, those are in our leadership all across the world. But one of those goals, and these are in no particular order, but I know that there's attack on all these things. The first one is control of the internet. This is a major goal right now. We all know that net neutrality just got passed or put through by the FCC, and that is basically making the internet into some type of utility. And this is a major issue because, as we're going to see in the future, that's just one small step to taking away the rights that we currently have on the internet. And basically what they're doing with the net neutrality is they're fixing a problem that doesn't exist. Why are they doing that? Because they want control. They already have control of major parts of our life, and they're already stealing control through companies like Facebook, who shares information, and Google, who also, collects data on everyone. Both of those are very tongue-in-cheek with our government. On top of that, other things that I want to mention is there are threat warnings of a cyber attack from people like Janet Napolitano. We have Obama making statements. We have the FBI sending out warnings. We also have the director of the NSA who had said stuff about a possible cyber attack, which could go, any particular way. But if you guys Google any of this stuff, you can find some of these quotes on there from these people. But all that to say that if they are warning us of a cyber attack, could it be that some kind of false flag, covert operation that's blamed on another group of people, probably terrorists in this case? But we know the government is behind the false flag. Could there be a false flag attack on our internet in order to control it? That is going to be their key into control of the internet. If they can have somebody hack the system, if they can have somebody break into our cybersecurity somehow and maybe cause power outages or whatever the case may be, then the American public will scream, yes, we want control of the internet. And this is a huge issue, and we need to keep in mind that these things are false flags as an ends to a means. And one of those goals right now, and I think it's a top priority goal, is to gain control of the internet. And why? Obviously for the power. And second, they want to control media, like me, like other YouTubers out there telling the truth, like, organizations like Before It's News, like Depka Files, like Alex Jones, like they want them all shut down. And that's kind of the agenda there. Another goal, and I'm going to actually show you some clips here, because if you want to check out anything on net neutrality, just check out my YouTube videos on that. But the second goal is gun confiscation and killing, basically, really, killing our Second Amendment rights. This is a huge thing with the White House right now. We know recently Josh Earnest, the White House secretary, or the White House press secretary, excuse me, he made a statement about guns recently. And let me just play that clip for you real quick. So give me just a sec. All right.
That there are some common sense
Whoops,
steps
let me
we can take.
Start that over. Kind of started in the middle. Okay.
The president has long believed that there are some common sense steps that we can take.
Common sense.
And when I say we, I mean the federal government, including Congress, that we can take to ensure that we're protecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans, while also taking some common sense steps to prevent people who shouldn't have guns from getting them. We're talking about an ATF proposal that's being considered through its standard process, and it's open now for public comment, and that we are looking at additional ways to protect our brave men and women in law enforcement.
Would you like to see all the executive orders that have been put into place to take over our nation, to have complete control over us, to take away our rights, round us up, and put us where they want us? Here we go. Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of all highways and seaports. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10998 allows the government to seize all means of transportation, including personal cars, trucks, or vehicles of any kind, and total control over highways, seaports, and waterways. Executive Order 10999 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into work brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. Executive Order 11002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. Executive Order 11003 allows the government to take over all airports and aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Executive Order 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. Executive Order 11005 allows the government to take over railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. Executive Order 11051 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crisis. Executive Order 11310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders, to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions, and to advise and assist the President. Executive Order 11049 assigns emergency preparedness function to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operative executive orders issued over a 15-year period. Executive Order 11921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wages, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in U.S. financial institution in any undefined national emergency. It also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has broad powers in every aspect of the nation. General Frank Salzito, chief of FEMA's Civil Security Division, stated in a 1983 conference that he saw FEMA's role as a new frontier in the protection of individual and governmental leaders from assassination and of civil and military installations, from sabotage and or attack, as well as prevention of dissident groups from gaining access to U.S. opinion or a global audience in times of crisis. FEMA's powers were consolidated by President Carter to incorporate the National Security Act of 1947 that allows for strategic relocation of industries, services, government, and other essential economic activities, and to rationalize
everywhere you look, corruption. We continue to fight pointless wars over lies, and we are killing innocents and letting our children die in wars just to ensure the Federal Reserve can continue their petrodollar scandal. We are sitting idly by while these crooks continue to loan fake money out to us at interest, stealing our homes, and enslaving our children. Let me make this extremely clear to all of you listening. Many corporations, especially the Federal Reserve, used the government to steal $17 trillion from your children. Your children did not have that money. They are now debt slaves. These people have stolen money from your children that are not even born yet, and sold their freedoms. They have enslaved you and many around the world. Wake up, world. And they did all of this by counterfeiting money and loaning it out at an interest. They have stolen hundreds of trillions from people around the world. Have you heard about Microsoft's Xbox manufacturers in China? They had to install suicide nets outside their buildings to ensure their employees don't jump out of the window to commit suicide. These are the conditions your children in the U.S. will be working under when the debt is soon owed, and it will be owed. It is not a matter of if it will be owed, but it is just a matter of when. And it will happen as soon as the United States economy collapses, which will happen very, very soon. And if you think because you do not live in the United States this does not affect you, you are wrong. And you are next. The only way we can stop this is if we all unite together and fight it. People of the U.S. are waking up to the Federal Reserve scandal, and the powers that be are currently afraid of retaliation. And that is precisely why they're trying everything they can to disarm us. You know how the media has been saying gun violence has been out of control and at an all-time high. They are not simply twisting the truth here or exaggerating. They are absolutely bold-faced presenting lies to you. First off, realize, gun violence in the United States has always been shockingly low. And gun violence has dropped by 49% in the last 11 years. The already absurdly low gun violence in America has literally dropped in half. In half. The fact they are saying that it is at an all-time high perfect demonstrates how biased the government and the media is. If this doesn't prove to you that they have an agenda, then nothing will. Do you remember how the media keeps repeating that there has been 74 school shootings since Sandy Hook? Those 74 shootings were not even mass shootings like they claim. Most were suicides and none of them even took place at a school. Not a single one. They are presenting lies to you, America. When will you wake up? At some point you have to ask yourself, why would the government fake 74 mass school shootings involving children? If they get our guns, we will lose the fight against them. And they will take away absolutely all of your freedoms and you and your children will be forever slaves. And don't forget they purposefully put you and your children into that debt. And because the Federal Reserve is present in all countries, the other countries of the world are next soon after. This plan is called the New World Order. It is the same New World Order the Vice President of the United States called for on national TV a month ago. He said we need to strive for and complete the New World Order. This is also the same New World Order President George Bush and President Kennedy said is our country's lifetime goal. And the same New World Order George Bush said on national TV said will happen no matter what we do, and we cannot prevent it. This has all been a long-time plan. The Federal Reserve and their partners want complete control of humanity. We cannot let this happen. They want to rule over us, like kings and queens. And humanity will be forever lost to enslavement by a bunch of tyrants who have publicly admitted they want to kill off the majority of the population so the masses are easier to control. They are going to wipe your bloodline completely off of the earth. He'll tell you the order of things to happen. The enslavement will follow immediately after guns are taken away and you cannot fight back. If they cannot get the guns before the economic collapse, then they will wait until the economy collapses. When the economy collapses, people will be starving. There will be looters and shootings. The government will insist on taking guns away to help, and as soon as the guns are taken away, then we will fall into a complete dictatorship. Do not fall for it. Remember, they are the ones who caused the economic collapse to begin with. This is the same tactic used on Germans and it worked. So expect it. As soon as the economy collapsed and the masses were starving, the German government asked the people to give up their rights and they listened. And then eventually the government was throwing the naked masses into giant burning hot ovens for mass execution. Do not give up your rights. Do not give up your guns. Fight back, as they were the ones who caused the problem. Just so you know, the people who are behind this Federal Reserve scam and New World Order are the same ones who funded Hitler's campaign. Make no mistake, these people are as brutal as Hitler himself, even more brutal. In fact, now we are going to show you some. Assuming America grows some balls and we win, we will need an overall plan. We have come up with a perfect plan. This plan offers extraordinary possibilities. It will make for the most beautiful and free world you can ever imagine. If we are successful, we can leave a much better for our children. A beautiful world. Watch every minute of the rest of the video. Do not skip a single bit of it, as it is all important. If this one video gets out to and can change the world, this is your opportunity to make a difference. Please share this video. What you want with it, get paid for the views. We don't care. Just get the message out there for the world to see. Now sit back and relax, enjoy the movie.
To you?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay. Anybody else want to throw anything out at us? Sir?
I think you're an anarchist and you don't know it yet.
Do you hear me denying anything?
Many people, when they hear the word anarchy, think of chaos and mayhem. So they assume that an anarchist must be in favor of disorder and violence. That is the complete opposite of the truth. Most objections and complaints about the anarchist or voluntarist philosophy are not actually about the philosophy itself, but result from people misunderstanding what the philosophy is all about. To illustrate a few points, we will use the example of two fictional islands. Authoritania, where there is a ruling class or government, and anarchia, where there is no ruling class of any kind. We will use these islands to examine several common misconceptions about anarchism. Lots of people think anarchy means every man for himself, or survival of the fittest, or the absence of any social cooperation or organization. They think that anarchy means everyone has to be self-sufficient. This comes from the false assumption that some kind of government is necessary for any organization to occur. Whether it's part of a republic, a democracy, a kingdom, or a dictatorship, a ruling class issues orders called laws and punishes anyone who disobeys them. That is not cooperation. That's domination. It's one group forcing its will on another. Authoritarianism can be used to force people into organized patterns, but that does not mean that people are incapable of organizing their activities without being forced. The most productive and useful examples of organization that we see today are anarchistic in nature. No one was forced to build the grocery store you go to. No one was forced to produce or sell anything in it. Everyone involved in the vastly complex operation of growing your food, transporting it, displaying it in the store, and selling it to you, everyone involved participates voluntarily, working in exchange for money. You and all the other store customers choose freely which store to go to and what to spend your money on. This purely voluntary arrangement allows for an amazingly complex degree of organized cooperation without anyone being coerced to participate. In contrast, under government, a very small group of people comes up with an idea and forces everyone else to participate in it and provide for its funding with tax dollars. In the authoritarian version of a supermarket, the ruling class would tell people what to produce and how much, what prices to charge, and they would tell customers what they must buy and what they must pay. Anyone who did not comply with the centralized master plan would be punished in some way. That is how government does things. Which one of these would you prefer? Another common but incorrect assumption is that if there were no ruling class or no government, people would have no way of defending themselves against common criminals or foreign invaders. Again, this is simply not true. The government version of protection is inherently hypocritical. Governments will use their hired law enforcers to find and lock up some of the private thugs and thieves and prevent them from preying on people. But every ruling class gets the money for its operations by way of taxation, demanding money from its subjects and punishing those who don't pay up. Oddly, every ruling class insists that it needs to be able to forcibly control and extort money from people in this way in order to protect them from private criminals who might try to forcibly control and extort them. In contrast, if there is no government, people do not lose their inherent right to defend themselves from violence or to defend what they have from those who would take it. Every person has this right, and they also have the right to organize and cooperate with each other to exercise that right. Organizing for mutual defense does not require any government-granted laws or authority. No one wants to be attacked or defrauded, and everyone wants to feel safe. Whether each person takes this on himself or herself individually, or whether they hire and organize others to do it on their behalf, it can be done on a voluntary basis. Those who insist that government is necessary often claim that if there wasn't a government, then smaller private gangs would spring up to enslave and rob people. Organized crime gangs exist along with government, and most people do not understand the dynamics between them and how government enriches and empowers organized crime while appearing to fight it. Black markets enrich organized crime, and money allows them to buy government protection. There's no reason to think they would do as well in an environment of freedom, where they would have fewer ways to make money and would be up against both individual and organized armed citizens. A criminal gang that's recognized as such has far less power than a gang whose aggression is perceived to be legitimate and proper. And that's the gang we call government. When thuggery is called law enforcement, and thievery is called taxation, and self-defense is called crime and terrorism, then even the widespread ownership of firearms can't do much to stop the aggression. Imagine a private gang trying to do the things that government does without the aura of authority, and imagine how a well-armed population would respond to this. The gang would fail quickly and dramatically. Another concern that people have when they first consider the idea of a stateless society is that some people are truly malicious, destructive, and sociopathic. The concern is that these people would be free to do anything they wanted and no one would stop them. But this concern is again based on a basic misunderstanding of human nature. Wherever we have a government ruling class, we still have freelance thieves and thugs who are not deterred by the laws of the politicians. In some instances, they're stopped by force by the police, or they decide not to commit a crime for fear of what the police might do to them. What makes this deterrence work is not the legislation or the official badges, but the simple threat of harm to the sociopath. It really makes no difference whether the threat comes from the police, or another citizen, or even another criminal. A sociopath doesn't care about laws or social rules. He cares about avoiding pain and hardship for himself. This is still true when a government ruling class is not involved at all. If the intended target of a would-be carjacker pulls out a gun, it doesn't make any difference to the carjacker whether that person has a badge or whether there's a law against taking people's cars. Discouraging nasty people from hurting others does not require special authority, only the ability to use defensive force. Ironically, though people hope that government will protect them, having a government, a gang which is believed to have the right to tax and control people, just creates one gang so big and powerful that normal people can't resist it. In short, to create a huge gang and then give it societal permission to control and extort people with the hope that this gang will prevent theft and thuggery is simply a self-contradictory idea, but that's what government always is. Some people might assume that if people organize for mutual protection and defense, then that's what government is. But there's an essential difference. People coming together to do something that everyone has the right to do, such as defend yourself, doesn't require any special authority. It's not government unless one group of people claims the right to do things which others do not have the right to do, such as taxing and controlling innocent people. Organized defense can be very effective without supposing the special right to rule over others, in other words, without being government. In contrast, governments rob the people they rule of far more wealth than private crooks could ever manage, making the idea of a protector government ridiculous. Another common objection to the idea of a stateless society is the notion that, if not for a group of lawmakers telling the rest of us how to behave, we would all behave like stupid, irresponsible, violent animals. This claim implies one of two things. Either we normal people have no idea what is right and wrong unless and until politicians tell us, or the only reason we want to do the right thing and coexist peacefully is because politicians told us to. A quick examination of your own motivations will show you that neither of those things is actually true. It's particularly odd to make this argument in a society where politicians are voted into power. If the people and are just stupid, violent animals, why does almost everyone want government to keep the peace and protect the innocent? Would a population of vicious, heartless, evil people try to elect good people to keep the evil people in line? Obviously not. The goodness and the desire for order and peace comes from us, not from the lawmakers we vote into office. The same holds true of everything that government does. If people are so short-sighted and selfish that they can't be trusted to voluntarily organize and raise money for whatever they deem important, then how can those same people be trusted to decide who should be in power? The implication is that the average person can't be trusted to run his own life, but can be trusted to choose someone to run other people's lives. Government is really not a civilizing influence. It's actually an uncivilizing influence. People who would never personally rob their neighbors constantly use the government to do it for them by way of taxation. People who would never dream of trying to control minute details of their neighbors' lives think it's just fine to vote for politicians to do it instead. Government gives everyone the opportunity and encouragement to rob and control other people without risk. So government, rather than serving as a check against the imperfections of our nature, instead drastically amplifies our greed, irresponsibility, and malice towards other human beings by giving us a legally acceptable and risk-free way to interfere with the lives and choices of our fellow men and women. Government brings out the criminal and busybody in everyone. In contrast, in the absence of a ruling class, people would lose their ability to ask lawmakers to interfere with their neighbors' lives. And we would not have law enforcers who could avoid responsibility for evil deeds by claiming that they were just following orders. Throughout history, far more theft, assault, oppression, and even murder has been committed by those acting on behalf of a supposed authority than by anybody else. Even basically good people, when they believe in government, will condone things or do things which they know would be wrong if they did them on their own. Most people know that theft and assault are bad, but they imagine that controlling their neighbors and forcing them to spend their money on things they don't want is perfectly moral and legitimate when it's done by way of the political process. Wrong becomes right when it's called taxation, legislation, regulation, and war. Anarchists know better. They know that human society will never be perfect, but it would be a whole lot better if evil deeds were committed only by genuinely nasty, sociopathic people, rather than being committed wholesale by basically good people who think that violent aggression is okay when it's called law enforcement. The fundamental principle of voluntarism is very simple. It's wrong to initiate violence against any other person, regardless of badges, laws, or alleged authority. The only time the use of force is justified is to defend against aggression. Almost everyone understands this on a personal level, but they've been taught that this basic rule of social living does not apply in the game of politics and government. Most people already know how to get along with others, and most people want a peaceful and just society. Our morality doesn't come from politicians making laws. Our ability to organize and cooperate doesn't come from the ruling class. When people escape the belief in government, they don't suddenly turn into violent animals. Our inherent right to defend ourselves and our ability to defend ourselves is not served by government. In fact, it's threatened by government more than by anything else. Ruling classes do not produce peaceful coexistence, but rather perpetual conflict and violence. Our belief in government authority takes our compassion, virtue, and good intentions and turns them into power for people who crave power and riches. Of course, the people who benefit most from the political racket will put a good spin on the system and do their best to convince people that it's a social necessity. But ask yourself this: have the thousands of laws, regulations, and taxes imposed on you by politicians made you a better person? Have they made you more productive or more caring? Is the world better off with the politicians taking your money and telling you how to live your life? Or do you think it might have been better off if you'd been allowed to spend your own money and make your own decisions? Is society really best served by a small class of people forcefully imposing a centralized master plan on everyone else? Can the orders and threats of a ruling class make the world what it should be? Or would society be better served by human freedom and respect for individual rights, by voluntary cooperation and peaceful organization? If this second option sounds better to you, maybe you should learn more about anarchism. Some people dismiss anarchism as a utopian idea that would only work if everyone were generous and compassionate. Obviously, everyone is not generous and compassionate all the time. But these people need to look at the other side of the coin. If people are too stupid, greedy, and malicious to be free, aren't they too stupid, greedy, and malicious to be trusted with power over others? Whether people are inherently good, bad, or some of each, giving a person power over others is not going to make that person better. In fact, power has historically been known to corrupt people and make them worse, whereas the discipline imposed by the equal freedom of everyone else brings out the best in human nature. Most people today think that we need some form of government because they mistakenly believe that obedience to authority makes us all more civilized, moral, and peaceful. In reality, it has always done exactly the opposite. Everyone knows that governments can be corrupt, abusive, inefficient, counterproductive, even tyrannical. But most people assume that the way to fix that is to get the right people into power. People have spent centuries trying to create a good society using different kinds of ruling classes, different legal structures, different ways of choosing the rulers, and so on. But every governmental construction has resulted in freedom and riches for some, and oppression, violence, and poverty for others. What if, instead of deciding what the throne should look like and who should sit on it, all people of goodwill embraced the non-aggression principle? What if, instead of looking to a ruling class to impose our values on society, we embraced the concept of self-ownership? These principles are simple and easy, to the point of being self-evident, but they're diametrically opposed to the authoritarian principles that most of us have been indoctrinated with. Anarchism does not mean chaos and violence, or every man for himself. Having no government does not mean having no morality, no organization, and no cooperation. Simply put, anarchism does mean that no one is your master and no one is your slave. And that's all it means. Themselves have no moral code and no conscience.